When you are building apps on Azure App Service, you want to make sure security isn't just an afterthought. It's built into your architecture from day one. Fortunately, Azure App Service gives you built-in tools to authenticate users and protect your app without having to write much or sometimes any security code yourself. You don't need to be a security expert in federated identity, token encryption, or auth flows to secure your app. Azure App Service provides a built-in authentication and authorization module, often referred to as Easy Auth, that helps you manage sign-ins, sessions, and identity, all with minimal code. This module runs in the same environment as your app but stays isolated from your actual application code, which means it can protect your endpoints without interfering with your logic. You can enable this capability directly in the Azure portal, where you configure how authentication behaves, whether you want to allow anonymous access or require sign-in for all users. Once you enable authentication and authorization in Azure App Service, the platform quietly handles much of the heavy lifting for you behind the scenes. It starts by authenticating users through the identity provider you select, whether that's Microsoft Entra ID, Google, Facebook, Twitter, or GitHub. App Service takes care of managing JSON Web Tokens, JWT, including their validation, secure storage, and refresh, so you don't have to implement those mechanisms yourself. It also keeps user sessions secure on the server side and automatically injects identity claims into each HTTP request header, allowing you to easily access user details without adding extra logic to your app. What's remarkable is that you don't need to modify your application code, install SDKs, or even worry about which programming language you're using. App Service handles it all for you. It just works. When it comes to configuring how your app handles incoming traffic, you have two main options within the authentication blade of an app service. If your app includes a public home page or offers multiple login choices, you can choose to allow anonymous requests. This means unauthenticated users can browse publicly accessible sections, while authenticated requests will still pass user identity information through headers. On the other hand, if you want to lock down the app and require users to log in before accessing anything, you can require authentication for all requests. In this case, App Service redirects all anonymous users to your chosen identity provider's login page, like /out/login/Google. This setup is ideal for apps functioning as secure portals or internal tools. Keep in mind though, that if your app needs a public-facing landing page, enforcing authentication on all requests may not be suitable. In that scenario, allowing anonymous access and securing specific routes within your app gives you more flexibility. If something doesn't work as expected during the sign-in process, App Service helps you debug easily. You can inspect login activity directly in your application logs and enable failed request tracing to see how Azure's EasyAuth module handles specific requests. Look for references to EasyAuth module 32 or EasyAuth module 64 in the trace logs to pinpoint issues. This level of visibility allows you to troubleshoot authentication problems without leaving your existing tools, making it easier to deliver a secure and reliable experience to your users. So what's your key takeaway? By enabling built-in authentication and authorization, you give your app enterprise-grade security with almost no effort. You reduce your exposure to security risk and let Azure handle complex identity scenarios for you, so you can stay focused on building features that matter to your users. Let's get on the Azure portal and see the section where you can add authentication to the web app. In this screen, you are inside the authentication section of your Azure App Service. This is where you configure how users will securely sign into your app. Right now, you haven't added any identity provider, so Azure is prompting you to add an identity provider. This is your starting point for enabling built-in authentication. When you click the Add Identity Provider button, you can choose from several options like Microsoft Entra ID, Google, Facebook, or Twitter. Once set up, Azure App Service will handle the entire authentication flow on your behalf, validating users, managing tokens, and injecting identity information into your app's requests, all without requiring you to write authentication logic. This section allows you to secure access to your app with just a few configuration steps, making it easy to enforce sign-in, protect your endpoints, or support social login experiences. It's a powerful way to integrate enterprise-grade security into your app without having to build it yourself. Let's click on Add Identity Provider. This screen is where you configure the identity provider for your web app's built-in authentication in Azure App Service. You've reached the Add an Identity Provider page, and this is where you tell Azure which external service should handle your app's sign-in process. On the right, you'll see a list of supported providers: Microsoft, Apple, Facebook, GitHub, Google, Twitter, and OpenID Connect. Each of these allows your users to sign in using credentials from that specific platform. For example, selecting Microsoft lets users authenticate with Microsoft Entra ID and access Microsoft APIs, while choosing Google lets users authenticate with their Google accounts and call Google APIs. Once you pick a provider from the drop-down menu at the top, you'll be asked to supply additional configuration details like app registration, client secret expiration, and supported account types. These settings vary depending on which provider you choose. Some providers may require you to register your app on their developer portal, generate secrets, or provide redirect URIs. You are also given the option to configure access restrictions, like whether to allow requests from specific clients or identities. These settings give you additional control over who can access your app and how authentication should behave. If you are setting this up for the first time, it's a good idea to try out a few providers in a test app to get familiar with how each one works. The configuration experience and requirements are slightly different for each identity provider, so experimenting will help you decide which one best suits your app and user base.